The other day, I received an order of inks from Ferris Wheel Press, and I had to try out my inks right away. They were a gorgeous palette that I decided that I had to explore further. So I was inspired to cover my whole art table paper with these beautiful inks. It took on a landscape feel, and so I decided to do what I've done many times with my art table paper and cut it up or make something into it. And this time I made a book. I made a concertina book from this large piece of paper. Now, you've seen me do this before in my last studio vlog here, and I decided to make this into a big, beautiful green landscape book. So come along with me today and I'm going to show you how I did this. So this piece has been fully covered in ink, and I used Ferris Wheel Press ink, these 3 colors, and they just turned out so beautifully that I just took the whole page and let myself explore with this color and see what would happen. And I did add a little bit of pink here and there, but this was primarily, these were my colors. The colors are Moss Park Green, Goose Poupon, and definitely Peach. And I just think they're gorgeous. I'm really happy with it. I did end up adding a little bit, very, very little bit of pink. I don't know if you can see this down here. A little bit of red here is their candied Marsala ink. The pink ink I used was Lights on Broadway. I also added in a little bit of their Bluegrass Velvet on some darker areas, but not too much, you know, just a little bit. So I just moved all of the color around. I started with some light washes, and then I started adding a little bit of white gouache that I would mix in with the ink as well. Sometimes it was just the straight ink, sometimes it was the ink mixed with water and maybe gouache or maybe not. So I just explored. The landscape feel kind of happened naturally because once I started laying down the green, I thought this was obvious the direction that I should go. And I just explored. This is a very simple process. I just cut it into thirds lengthwise, and then I folded it in half twice so that I got 4 quarters on each length. And then when I cut it, I only cut from the bottom right over to the very last fold on the left, and on the upper side, I did the same, coming in from the left to the right and stopping at that fold in the upper right. And it makes it really easy to fold it into a book. So you fold it, and then when you get to this end here, you fold it into a mountain fold, and then you keep going back and forth. It kind of becomes real obvious once you do it. And then you can open it like a book. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about the way I use these inks. These inks are primarily for fountain pens and dip pens, but they are absolutely used for art making and watercolor techniques, and I just love them. I love the hues. They really speak to me. And I love these bottles, and I love that they come in these gorgeous round boxes. I definitely have a thing for round boxes, and I have a lot of theirs. So one of the things I do for identifying which color ink, because it doesn't say on the bottle, is I will put an ink dot on the bottom of each bottle. You know, just color some sticker paper and then just use a hole punch to cut that out and glue it on the bottom. That is always a good thing to know which ink you're using. It just helps that I don't have to test the ink before I use it to make sure I know what color I'm using. And I do mix my own colors. I use a pipette and I extract from the bottles, and I mix in separate containers, and I always extract with a pipette that is clean so that I make sure that the ink that stays inside the bottle stays pure with whatever color it is. And then again, I use stickers to put the color of the ink on these little bottles that you can get online. I will leave a link for these below. Same with this. And one of the tricks that I like to use when using the ink out of this bottle or any bottle that maybe might even kind of have potential of falling over, what I do is I use my kneaded eraser and I secure it on my desk with my kneaded eraser. So I have my kneaded eraser rolled into just kind of a thick, long snake, and then I just secure it on my table so that it can't really fall over. It works really well. Another thing you can do is if you want to angle this bottle, like say this ink here is halfway used, and if I want to get to it easier, I can just secure it right on my kneaded eraser. So I can secure it without having to worry about it falling over. And then I have access to the ink when it's on the side. A little bit easier. Once this was finished, I knew this was the perfect opportunity to carve another stamp. Actually, I carved 2 stamps. So the stamps that I carved were inspired by my leafy block prints, which you've seen me work on in the last couple of months. And I think they turned out kind of cool. Okay, so I want to carve a botanical, and I have several sketched out in here. Well, let's see. That I want to explore, and I'm not sure. I think I know which one I want to use, but I'm just giving it another look really fast. I could carve like a real silhouette, or I could carve something that has a little bit more detail, some more positive and negative space interaction. A lot of these I potentially would like to carve as stamps, but right now I'm just going to focus on this one. And let's see, where is it? Here it is. I was thinking about carving this one. I don't know why, but I don't think I'm going to like it when I carve it, so I'm going to carve this one. It's a little bit different than my leafy block print. It's a little smaller, has the same kind of style, same kind of vibe, and I'm just gonna jump in and start carving. Now, I'm not gonna go into the details of carving these stamps. You've seen me carve stamps before. I have my hand-carved stamps made simple. But if you have any questions, or if you wanna see a specific video on how I did this, or a video where I go into far greater detail, then just leave me a comment below and I'll make a video for you. Okay, so I'm using a #1 V-shaped blade and my speedball cutter and an X-Acto blade just to cut away the excess. But first I'm going to go around the outside. Okay, so I've got everything taken away that I think I want to be removed, and I won't really know for sure until I take a test print, and then I can decide what of the noise around the outside that I want to remove or what I want to refine inside the leaves. But before I do that, I am going to use my kneaded eraser, my trusty kneaded eraser that I use for so many things, as you already saw, to remove the crumbs inside this stamp, because it will get on my ink pad, or if it sits on the stamp it will impair the print, but it's also just to clean it up. I'm going to use Versacolor pigment ink. I'm going to use the bamboo color, and I'm just going to take a print and see. Now, my tip on inking up a stamp is you ink more than you think you should, and then you ink it a little bit more, and the best way to ink it is by tamping it directly on top, because you can see what you're doing. You can see if you need to add more ink to the ink pad, and it looks like I probably do on this one, but I think I can get away with it for now. I'm just gonna really ink it up heavily before I take my print. And you can see the ink kind of build up on it. So adding more does make a difference. And I can see I've got a little bit right in here, right here, I've got a little speck of carving material. I want to get that out of there. Okay, I got this at a flea market. I just love it. I thought about getting a Baron, but I haven't gotten around to it, but this works perfect most of the time. So it definitely looks like a sister stamp to this one, the one that I've done videos on, and I love this leafy block print. So I'm glad that it has a little smaller sidekick that I can use. See, there it is again. I love that stamp. I'm going to use it to stamp on this landscape here, and I think I'm going to carve another stamp before I do that as well. Okay, so I just carved this one too, and I need to take away this negative space inside these two leaves. But other than that, I think this one looks pretty good. I like the angle of it because I think I can do a lot with it going at an angle as opposed to just going straight up and down. It will give it more interest. And I might clean it up a little bit. I don't know, I might just leave it. But on this one, I definitely want to clean it up right here. There's a lot of confusion going on here at this tip. So I'll just clean that up right here. After I remove that, I'm going to stamp on this paper and see what happens. Okay, so it's all stamped, and I'm gonna let it dry. Some of the ink needs to cure a little bit. I'm gonna let it sit overnight. And this is the middle part, which you can see is upside down for the obvious reason when you go to fold it. And then this is the top. And not every page is actually packed and full. You'll see it better when I fold it. But I kind of like that. I think it's good to have a few spots for the eye to rest as you're working on it, to not fill it up completely. So I left a lot open, and I think it's going to work out really well when I fold it up. And since the back is painted as well, I'll have a little bit of interest here on the other side. So I decided to stamp the cover of this book with the larger stamp, and I used distressed inks, peeled paint, and I had to start with inking the ink pad. Because you've heard me say it before, you can't get very far with a dry ink pad. That's why I always implore you to buy the re-inker so that you can really have a lot more freedom stamping and making the prints that you want without having to worry about running out of ink. Also, I misted a little bit of water on the inked up stamp to give it a watercolory effect, and you can see what happened here. one was really, really watercolory. This is just one of my favorite ways of using watercolor and stamps, and I'm going to share more of that with you in the future. Now, you may have noticed I didn't cut away that inside section of the smaller stamp. I sort of just got carried away with my stamping, and I will go back in and do that. So if you caught that, then you know. But I just went ahead and started stamping, and I think it turned out fine. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. My first video for the year, and I have many more to come. See you in the next video.